The Birthmark by Nathaneil Hawthorne.
In the latter part of the last century, there lived a man of science, an eminent proficient in every branch of natural philosophy, who not long before our story opens had made experience of a spiritual affinity. More attractive than any chemical one, he had left his laboratory to take care of an assistant, cleared his fine countenance from the furnace smoke, washed the stain of acid from his fingers, and persuaded a beautiful woman to become his wife. In those days, when the comparatively recent discovery of electricity and other kindred mysteries of nature seemed to open paths into the region of miracle, it was not unusual for the love of science to rival the love of women in its depth and absorbing energy. The higher intellect, the imagination, the spirit, and even the heart might all find their congenial element in pursuits which, as some of their ardent votaries believed, would ascend from one step of powerful intelligence to another, until the philosopher should lay his hand on the secret of creative force and perhaps make new worlds for himself. We know not whether Almus possessed a degree of faith in man's ultimate control of nature. He had devoted himself, however, too unreservedly to scientific studies ever to be weaned from them by any second passion. His love for his young wife might prove stronger of the two, but it could only be by intertwining itself with his love of science and uniting the strength of the latter to his own. Such a union accordingly took place, and was attended with truly remarkable consequences and a deeply impressive moral. One day, very soon after their marriage, Alma sat gazing at his wife with a trouble in his countenance that grew strong until he spoke. "Georgiana," said he, "has it never occurred to you that the mark upon your cheek might be removed?" "No, indeed," she smiled, but perceiving the seriousness of the manner, she blushed deeply. "To tell you the truth, it has been so often called a charm that I was simple enough to imagine it might be so." "Ah, upon another face perhaps it might," replied her husband, "but never on yours. No, dearest Georgiana, you came so nearly perfect from the hand of nature that the slightest possible defect, which we hesitate whether to term a defect or a beauty, shocks me, as being the visible mark of earthly imperfection." "Shocks you, my husband?" cried Georgiana, deeply hurt, at first reddening with momentary anger, but then to tears. "Then why did you take me from my mother's side? You cannot love shocks you." To explain this conversation, it must be mentioned that in the center of Georgiana's left cheek there was a singular mark, deeply interwoven, as it were, with the texture and substance of her face, in the usual state of her complexion, a healthy though delicate bloom. The mark wore a tint of deeper crimson, which imperfectly defined its shape amid the surrounding roughness. When she blushed, it gradually became more indistinct, and finally vanished amid the triumphant rush of blood that bathed the whole cheek with brilliant glow. But if any shifting motion caused her to turn pale, there was the mark again, a crimson stain upon the snow, in what Alma sometimes deemed an at most fearful distinctness. Its shape bore not a little similarity to the human hand, though of the smallest pygmy size. The Georgiana's lovers were wont to say that some fairy at her birth had laid her tiny hand upon infant cheeks, and left his impress there in token of the magic and endowments that were to give her such sway over all hearts. Many a desperate swain would have risked her life for the privilege of pressing his lips to the mysterious hand. It must not be concealed, however, that the impression wrought by this fairy sign manual varied exceedingly, according to the difference of temperament in the beholders. Some fastidious persons, but they were exclusively of her own sex, affirmed that the bloody hand, as they chose to call it, quite destroyed the effect of Georgiana's beauty and rendered her countenance even hideous. But it would be as reasonable to say that one of the small changes which sometimes occur in the purest statuary marble would convert the eve of powers to a monster. Masculine observers, if the Birthmark did not heighten their admiration, contented themselves with washing it away, that the world might possess one living specimen of ideal loveliness, without the semblance of a flaw. After his marriage, for he thought little or nothing of the matter before, Alma discovered that this curse was case with himself. Had she been less beautiful, if enemies self could have found aught else to sneer at, he might have felt his affection heightened by the prejudice of this mimic hand, now vaguely portrayed, now lost, now stealing forth again and glimmering to and fro with every pulse of emotion that throbbed within her head. But seeing her otherwise so perfect, he would found this one defect grow more and more intolerable with every moment of their united life. It was the fatal flaw of humanity which nature, in one shape or another, stamps ineffaceable on all her productions, either to imply that they are temporary and finite, or that their perfection must be wrought by toil and pain. The crimson hand expressed the ineludible gripe in which mortality clutches the highest and purest of earthly mounts, degrading them into kindred with the lowest and even with the very brutest, like whom their visible frames return to dust. In this manner, selecting it as the symbol of his wife's liability to sin, sorrow, decay, and death, Alma's sombre imagination was not long in rendering the Birthmark a frightful object, causing him more trouble and horror than ever Georgiana's beauty, whether of soul or sense, had given him delight. At all the seasons which should have been their happiest, he invariably, and without intending it, nay, in spite of a purpose to the contrary, reverted to this one distressing topic, trifling as it at first appeared. It so connected itself with the innumerable trains of thoughts and modes of feeling that it became the central point of all. With the morning twilight, Alma opened his eyes upon his wife's face and recognized the symbol of imperfection. And when they sat together at the evening hearth, his eyes wandered stealthily to her cheek, and beheld, flickering with the blaze of the wood fire, the spectral hand that wrought immortality where he would fain have worshipped. Georgiana soon learned to shudder at her gaze. It needed but a glance with the peculiar expression that his face often wrought to change the roses of her cheek into death-like paleness and amaze, which the crimson hand was brought strongly out, like a base relieved ruby on the whitest marble. Late on one night, when the lights were growing dim, so as hardly to betray the stain on the poor white cheek, she herself, for the first time, voluntarily took up the subject. "Do you remember, my dear Alma?" said she, with a feeble attempt at a smile. "Have you any recollection of a dream last night about this odious hand?" None whatever," replied Alma, static. But then he added, in a dry, cold tone, affected for the sake of concealing the real depth of his emotion, "I might well dream of it, for before I fell asleep, it had taken a pretty firm hold of my fancy." "And you did dream of it," continued Georgiana hastily, for she dreaded lest a gush of tears should interrupt what she had to say. "A terrible dream. I wonder that you can never forget it. It is possible to forget this one expression. It is in her heart now. We must have it out. Reflect, my husband, for by all means I would have you recall that dream. The mind is in a sad state when slave. The all-involving cannot contain her spectres within the dim region of her sphere, but suffers to break forth, affrighting this actual life with secrets that perchance belong to a deeper one." Alma now remembered his dream. He had fancied himself with his servant Aminadab, attempting an operation for the removal of the birthmark. But the deeper went the knife, the deeper sank the hand, until at night its tiny grasp appeared to have got hold of Georgiana's heart. And, however, her husband was inexorably resolved to cut or wrench it away. When the dream had shaped itself perfectly in his memory, Alma sat in his wife's presence with a guilty feeling. Truth often finds its way to the mind closed, muffled in robes of sleep, and then speaks with uncompromising directness of matters in regard to which we practice an unconscious self-deception. During our waking moments until now, he had not been aware of the tyrannizing influence acquired by one idea over his mind, and of the length which he might find in his heart to go for the sake of giving himself peace. Alma, resumed Georgiana solemnly, I know now what may be the cause to both of us to rid me of this fatal birthmark. Perhaps its removal may cause cureless deformity, or it may be the stain goes as deep as it lies itself again. Do we know that there is a possibility, on any terms, of unclasping the firm grip of the little hand which was laid upon me before I came into the world? Dearest Georgiana, I have spent much thought upon the subject. Hastily interrupted by Alma, I am convinced of the perfect practicability of its removal, if there be the remotest possibility of it, continued Georgiana. Let the attempt be made at whatever risk. Danger is nothing to me for life, while this hateful mark makes me the object of your horror and disgust. Life is a burden which I would fling down with joy. Either remove this dreadful hand or take my wretched life. You have deep science. All the world bears witness of it. You have achieved great wonders. Cannot you remove this little mark which I cover with the tips of 2 small fingers? Is this beyond your power? For the sake of your own peace, and to save your poor wife from madness. Noblest, dearest, tenderest wife, cried Alma rapturously, doubt not my power. I have already given this matter the deepest thought, which might almost have enlightened me to create a being less perfect than yourself. Georgiana, you have led me deeper than ever into the heart of science. I feel myself fully competent to render this dear cheek as faultless as its fellow. And then, most beloved, what will be my triumph when I shall have corrected what nature left imperfect in her fairest work? Even Pygmalion, when his sculptured women assumed life, felt not greater ecstasy than mine will be. It is resolved, then, said Georgiana, faintly smiling, and Alma, spare me not, so you should find the birthmark take refuge in my heart at last. Her husband tenderly kissed her cheek, her right cheek, not that which bore the impress of the crimson hand. The next day Alma apprised his wife of a plan that he had formed whereby he might have opportunity for the intense thought and constant watchfulness which the proposed operation would require, while Georgiana likewise would enjoy the perfect repose essential to its success. They were to schedule themselves in the extensive apartments occupied by Alma as a laboratory, and where, during his toilsome youth, he had made discoveries in the elemental powers of nature that had roused the admiration of all the learned societies in Europe. Seated calmly in this laboratory, the pale philosopher had investigated the secrets of the highest cloud region and of the profoundest mines. He had satisfied himself of the causes that kindled and kept alive the fires of the volcano, and had explained the misery of fountains, and how it is that they gush forth, some so bright and pure, and others with such rich medicinal virtues, from the dark bosom of the earth. Here too, and at an earlier period, he had studied the wonders of the human frame, and attempted to fathom the body process by which nature assimilates all her precious influences from earth and air and from the spiritual world to create and foster man her masterpiece. The latter pursuit, however, Alma had long laid aside in unwilling recognition of the truth